Hey everybody, welcome to CAF Warbird Tube, the show where we talk about World War II, aviation, history, and so much more. Warbird Tube is produced by the Commemorative Air Force, the world's largest flying museum. Our mission is to educate, inspire, and honor through flight and living history experiences. The CAF began the Warbird movement more than 65 years ago, and thanks to the support of individuals like you, we continue to grow strong. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and now our host, Steve Buss. Thanks for watching and keep 'em flying.
Hello everyone and welcome to CAF Warbird Tube. You know we love hearing from our viewers about the different episodes that you've enjoyed. In fact, we've had so many responses that we've put together a few best of shows. This time we feature Colonel Larry Lumpkin and the P-51 Mustang Gunfighter. We hope you enjoy the show.
Well, welcome to the CAF Warbird Tube webinar, a show where we talk about warbirds, about history, about flying, World War II, anything related to that. That's what we like to cover here on Warbird Tube. It is supported by the Commemorative Air Force, the world's largest flying museum. If you would like to support this nonprofit organization that has more than 12,000 members worldwide, we invite you to drop in on the website, commemorativeairforce.org, and you can help us support the education, inspiration, and honor through flight and living history experiences. That's the mission of the CAF. We'll take donations, memberships, or just volunteering your time and talent to help keep these wonderful airplanes in the air. And we're going to talk about one of those aircraft tonight, the P-51 Gunfighter, one of my favorite aircraft, the P-51, and one of my favorite people, Larry Lumpkin. We're introduce Larry in just a moment. And but if you don't know me, I'm Steve Buss, your host for tonight. I'd like to welcome everyone who's watching on Facebook. Welcome to those of you on YouTube, and of course those who are watching on GoToMeeting. Now, if you'd just take a second out of your busy day as we're getting ready to get going here and hit the like, share, or subscribe or follow us button, we'd appreciate that because that helps to keep these things going and to keep you informed of the next time we go live with a program like this. So, with no further ado, we'd like to introduce Larry Lumpkin, who is, I will call him the caretaker of the P-51 Mustang Gunfighter. Larry is joining us from sunny, warm Florida. Good to have you here, Larry. Good to see you.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Now, as we start talking about the P-51 Mustang and specifically Gunfighter, folks, if you have any questions, just type them in the chat box on whatever platform you're on, and we'll try to answer the questions as we go along this evening. So, Larry, first of all, tell us a little bit about you and how you got involved in aviation.
Well, I had been interested in aviation since I was a young child. And most of my inspiration came from watching crop dusters in Southeast Arkansas. That's where I grew up. My folks didn't have much money, and my mother would not support me going out and getting involved with the airplanes. And I was wanting to go out and do nothing but help out with the crop dusters. And she was afraid I was going to jump in one of them and go flying with them. So anyway, long story short, I didn't get started until after I got out of the Air Force and moved to Omaha, and I learned to fly right there at Epley Airfield in Omaha. I got my private certificate in about 2 months. I was a little bit motivated, and by June of the following year, I had my CFI, my instrument and commercial. So I went to work almost 3 years as a CFI, and then flew corporate until I got hired at United Airlines in 1986 and flew there for 32 years and retired 3 years ago. And I got involved with the Warbirds, well, actually the CAF in 1994. And that's how I got involved in this operation.
Well, it's interesting that you came out of the Air Force and not as a pilot. So I didn't know that about you. What did you do when you were in the Air Force?
I was electronics head. I worked in research and development missile guidance system out at the test track at White Sands Missile Range.
All right. And what are some of the aircraft that you flew in your commercial aviation endeavors?
Well, let's see. My first corporate job was a co-captain on a Mitsubishi MU-2. I flew that, they call it the Rice Rocket. Great airplane once you got it above 200 knots, but a really good airplane. And flew that for about a year, and the company sold the airplane, so I went and worked for the beach dealer there, and I flew all the King Airs there and helped work in the sales department. And when they were selling out their business, I went to work for a company down in Harlingen, Texas that was founded by some guys from Omaha, and they had a Cessna Citation. That was my first jet, and just a little small jet. Flew that for about 2.5 years till they sold their airplane. Moved back to Omaha, flew King Airs and Saberliners until I got hired at United.
Now, when you were down in Harlingen, was that still during the period that CAF was in Harlingen as well?
Yes, and I don't mean to put out negative press, but frankly, I walked around in that place and no one would say hello or even speak to me. It was sad, looking back. It was kind of the culture at the time, and I can say, thank God, the culture has changed 180 degrees from that day.
That is good. That is something that I know CAF has tried to instill in members and units, that you never know who's going to come through the door, and whether that person is just someone interested in learning more about aviation or a well-seasoned veteran. You just never know until you say hi and strike up a conversation.
Absolutely.
So when you were with United, what did you fly there?
I finished up on the Airbus A320, but I engineered the 727, the DC-10, flew co-pilot on the 737, the 757, 767, and then I went to the Airbus, or correction, I went to the 737 as captain, and then Airbus as captain. I finished up on the Airbus. I wanted to fly the Mustang on the weekends, so I stayed senior on a smaller airplane, and I flew it for 23 years. So it became just like another glove to wear.
There you go. I would think it's that if we set the Mustang aside, was the Airbus then your favorite commercial aircraft to fly? Absolutely
not.
No?
It was close, but the 757 Boeing is a pilot's airplane.
Okay.
I mean, it's got performance. It takes off good. It stops good. It's just a great airplane. But the Airbus is by far the second.
Okay. Well, let's get into the meat of tonight's topic, and that is the P-51 Mustang. So we'll take you back to 1940 and World War II. This is the XP-51 Mustang. And Larry, give us maybe your sort of brief history of the airplane during World War II.
Well, first off, I think we should talk about how it came about. The British came over to Dutch Kimmelberger at North American Aviation and said, "Hey, we need you to build some Curtiss P-40s for us." And because Curtiss could not keep up with the demand that they had. And Dutch Kimmelberger, the president, says, "Hey, we don't want to build P-40s. We want to build a new fighter for you." And he says, "Well, they looked at that with a jaundiced eye. Says, you never built a fighter before, And he says, "Yeah, but we can deliver." So what the British purchasing agency insisted on was, "Hey, you got to look at this new fighter that Curtiss Wright is working on." I think it's the XP-46. I forget what the number was, but anyway, they had one in development and already a prototype. So some of the guys went to New York, talked about this for about 4 months, and in May, they signed a contract for the new Mustang. And 120 days later, they had a prototype sitting on the ramp. And the rest is history. It originally had the Allison engine, and they figured out that it was quite a bit restricted because of the altitude performance for fighting. It was originally designed as a, air-to-ground support machine, but the guy over there flying in England for Rolls-Royce, and to me, he's one of the heroes of the war because his name is Ronald Harker. He's the test pilot for Rolls-Royce, and he's out flying this Mustang around, and he comes back and he says, "Hey guys, we need to put a Merlin in this thing." And everybody was reluctant. He said, no. He says, "I'm telling you, if you marry a Merlin to this airframe, you're going to have a beast." And therein was the rest of the story. So.
And as we're looking at these two Mustangs, these are the early model Mustangs, still with the Allison engine, and then, of course, more famously, the D model with the bubble canopy, which has the Rolls-Royce.
Yep. One of the biggest questions, I say biggest, the most frequently asked question was, what kind of engine's in that airplane? I said, it's the Rolls-Royce. And you can't believe how many people ask if that's the Allison in that airplane. And I have to remember what Reggie told me way back, that Bob Hoover would always say when he gets asked a question a million times over and over and over. He says, Bob Hoover would just be the most humble, sweet man that he really was, and say, "Well, that's a good question," and answer the question.
Of course, the Mustang had a very impressive combat record in the I guess the second half of World War II with the high altitude capabilities and also being able to escort bombers all the way into Germany and back. That was the first airplane that was able to do that successfully. Also served in the Pacific. And if you want to get into a really good debate around a campfire sometime at an air show, just try and describe which one is the best fighter. And if you got the Army Air Corps guys are going to say the Mustang. Of course, the Navy guys are probably going to go to the Corsair, and the British will go to the Spitfire. But it's always interesting conversation.
Yeah, one of the major things that the Mustang shined and helped us win the war was the long range. They could get the airplane way up to altitude with the Merlin two-stage, two-speed supercharger and get back to just sipping gas. That way they could go all the way to Germany, fight, and come back. That is where it excelled above every fighter in the war. And besides that, it was a great flying, performing airplane as far as fighting as well.
Now, of course, in your experience flying the airplane, no one's really chasing you. Although I'm sure you've done some mock dogfights and things. But what is describe how it is to fly that airplane in even a simulated combat environment.
Well, the only airplane that I have mock dog fought with was a T6 painted like a zero. And it's a very fun routine to fly. With this airplane, you have to be real careful because he can only go about 150 knots. And you're on the lower end of the spectrum with the Mustang, and you can't be just yanking and banking too hard. You have to be real careful. And I know those guys when they were fighting, they had to watch all of that, because they were doing high speed stuff and slow speed stuff. And the guys that could combine the high energy and the low energy state and use it to their advantage was the one that's going to win.
And of course, one of the most famous P-51 pilots who remarkably is still around, just celebrated his 100th birthday, Colonel Bud Anderson, looking at a couple of the aircraft that he flew. Old Crow was his mount. Explain to us as we look at the top picture there. That's an unusual canopy on that Mustang, isn't it? Yes,
it's called the Malcolm hood, and if you notice in the B's and C's, they kind of have a birdcage type canopy. Well, they had a little bit of an answer to that with this Malcolm hood, where they could see so much better. And that's, as we all know, the D model really, with the large bubble canopy, really made that possible to see very good. But that was a strict advantage when they were able to put that Malcolm hood on it.
And as we look at the two aircraft here, it looks like I guess the turtle deck, the area between the back of the cockpit and the tail it's much higher on this particular model, which would be assuming a B or C compared to the D.
I think that's a B right there.
And then on the D, it's much lower.
Correct. Actually, the turtle deck airplane, like the red tail, it's a little bit faster. You got a little bit more drag on the later model, but the visibility is well worth every bit of it. The sacrifice of a few knots of speed.
And you've met Bud Anderson through the years?
I have indeed. In fact, I saw him a couple years back at the tribute. I flew in the tribute at Oshkosh to Bud Anderson. Had the privilege of meeting him and had him sign my box that we all got presented when we participated in that. And he's just a real honest to goodness guy, down to earth. You can sit and talk to him just like you and I talk right now.
Yeah.
I also met him over at Arsenal of Democracy in 2015. He spoke to us there. So I've met him on occasion 3 or 4 times. Great guy.
He's a like you say, a very down to earth, very humble. He was not only World War II, but he was in the Air Force up through the early 1970s. If you're looking for a good book to fly and fight, is his book, his sort of autobiography. It's a very good read, and certainly recommend it.
Yeah, it's a great book.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your favorite airplane, and that would be the P-51 that we know as Gunfighter. What's the history on this particular airframe?
This airplane was manufactured late in the war. It came off the line in March of '45. It was built in Inglewood plant out in California. And after it was test flown, it was flown over to Newark, New Jersey, and put on a ship there and shipped over to Warmington, England, and it's going assigned to the Mighty Eighth and was going to fly out of there. Well, by the time, excuse me, they got the airplane there and was preparing it for battle, everything was over. So it did not see battle, and it sat there for a while, not very long, which surprises me how quickly they got it back across the ocean into the depot there at Newark. But it sat there in Newark for a couple years and eventually got assigned to I think it's Olmsted Field, just around Pittsburgh area. And then it started going to various guard units at that time. And it's been the Kentucky Guard Unit. It was in Chicago O'Hare before it was the big airport. It was there. It was in Cheyenne a lot of its time in the Guard, Cheyenne, Wyoming, and it went down to the New Mexico Guard. And it was surplused in '57. And various owners, and I do not know all the owners that owned it, during the civilian part of it. I do know that there were some gentlemen in New Mexico CAF wing down there that were together and owned it together before the CAF acquired it. And that's when General Urschler got involved with helping to acquire the airplane and donate it to the CAF. And that was in 1977. And we've had it ever since.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Reg Urschler, who a lot of folks who have seen Gunfighter through the years recognize the name, and we've had some questions already asking, about him and how he's doing these days. He's doing
well. He's in fact, I just saw an email from him today, in fine form. He's still full of quite frankly piss and vinegar, as we'd all say, but he's doing well. He retired from flying the airplane in '07, and that's when he passed it on to me to manage it. He flew the airplane 30 years, and from '77 to '07, And he flew with the Heritage Flight, the original Heritage Flight program, and I don't know how many years, but several. And he was one of the original members of that team. He self-supported airplane, self-flew it by himself, sole-sponsored it for all those years until he brought me on in '03. I soloed it in May of '03. So, and to say Reg is a colorful character, that would be an understatement of the day. But I think we all know that. Most people who know Reggie know what I mean, in all due respect. So.
Excellent. Where did the name Gunfighter come from?
That I'm not 100% sure, but I think a gentleman that owned it or had part ownership in it was in the guard unit down at Kelly, and they're known as the Gunfighters. And I think that's where it come from, but I cannot 100% confirm that.
So that would have been before it became part of the CAF.
It definitely was a Gunfighter before it became part of the CAF.
Okay. And it is probably, without a doubt, one of the most recognizable Mustangs on the airshow circuit, having been around so long. Have you had an opportunity to fly any of the other Mustangs that are in the CAF fleet?
Yes, I've had the privilege of flying Red Tail. I have not flown Red Nose.
And can you compare the two? Because the Red Tail is the earlier, the C model, right?
Yes.
Compared to the D?
I would say the biggest thing is the visibility. It's definitely different. You set in it differently. You set it at a different height. You can't adjust the seat as well as you can in the D model. And it's classic when I get back in that Red Tail, what little I get to fly it. You know, I'm used to sticking my head out, looking, you know, side to side, to look around the front, and I'm clanking my head against the canopy and just naturally doing that, you know. But you really have to watch your S-taxi in an airplane more than anything. Once you get in the air, the airplane flies much the same. I mean, the engine operates the same. There's a few system differences, but it's really a great flying airplane.
Of course, this is the portion of the broadcast that you have two choices. You can continue to watch Larry and I talk and on the screen, or you can just watch all these wonderful pictures of Gunfighter that are going to go by. And as you do, please recognize the wonderful photographers who have shared their photos with us. We really appreciate that. And as you see their names go by, if you recognize them, if you're friends on Facebook or something, especially like Kevin Hong, just tell him you saw some of his pictures on this webinar tonight. Larry, did you fly any Warbirds before you soloed? You said you soloed the Mustang in 2003. What did you fly before that?
In order to qualify for the Mustang, I had to get a couple hundred hours of T6 time, and that's what I cut my Warbird teeth on, if you will. I had a friend of Reggie's, real close friend of his, check me out in the T6. His name is Frank Strickler, and I'm forever indebted to his training on that initial checkout because he really worked me hard, but he gave me one hell of a good checkout. And he had me flying the airplane from the back seat in 25 knot crosswinds. You know, we worked hard for a full week almost in Indianapolis getting that done. But that was my major Warbird prep, if you will, for the Mustang.
Did you own a T6?
I didn't at the time. I do now. Four of us own it together.
Okay.
And we've owned it now for almost, I'm thinking 8 years now. So I don't get to fly it enough. I'm too busy flying a Mustang, but that's tough duty, huh?
Yeah, really.
No one's going to feel sorry for me there, right?
I'm afraid not, Larry. No. Yeah. Do I fly the T6 or the Mustang today?
Yeah.
I don't know.
T6 and Texans, right?
That's right. And this is the conversation that you and Leah and I kind of had before, and that is the question always comes up: is how does one become a Mustang pilot? And it is a process. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it.
It is, but I can honestly say that if you're determined and you have, number one, a good attitude, a good work ethic, and good pilot skills and aeronautical decision making, you can eventually do it. I mean, you make your opportunities come. And I was just so fortunate that the airplane was there where I was at in Omaha, and I got involved in being a grunt for years. I watched on the airplane and I helped work on it and did a lot of the wing work, for the Great Plains wing before I even was asked to even think about flying the airplane. And, being the right time, or right place, the right time, you got to make your luck, because you got to be prepared when the time comes along.
And there's still a group that helps you maintain the airplane there in Nebraska.
Yes, and I cannot even go beyond mentioning what it means that one individual in particular, his name is Jerry Mason, has worked on this airframe over 40 years. He's been with Reggie for years, and he's stuck with me, and he's like the rest of us. He's getting in age, but he loves that airplane, and that is his life. And a lot of us just say, hey, we're going to ask permission if we can go fly Jerry's airplane. He knows that airplane backwards and forwards, and he'll grumble and but it's always ready to go. And we've got other volunteers that help a lot, but Jerry's our mainstay guy, and I help wrench on it as well.
Do you have an A&P yourself?
I do not. I'm just a grade A grunt.
There you go. And that's an important thing to bring up too with the CAF is the pilots do get the glory of flying the airplanes, but there's a role for a lot of people in there, and especially mechanics working on these older engines. It's almost becoming a lost art, but one just like flying an airplane that you can learn from someone like Jerry who can pass along their knowledge.
Yep. And what happens sometimes is guys get so set in their ways of doing something a certain way, and Jerry will admit he does that, but he'll turn right around and teach a new guy and have, the patience of Job. Now, you can't do this. You've got to do this way, because this will do this and this and this. And, this is not healthy, but this is.
It's all good. And do you know how many hours are on the airframe in the 80 years it's been around almost? Yeah,
it's right at 6,800, somewhere around there. And I'm pulling the figure out of my head because I don't remember the exact takt time and total time, but it's right around 6,800 hours.
And in that time, the airplane looks gorgeous, always has, but has there been a lot of extensive restoration work done on it through the years?
Yes, it was completely restored in '81 after an accident.
Okay.
And it has been continually, I would say back channel restored, as Jerry just continually fixes things over and over and over. And, he calls the guys that did the restoration, the restorers, the professionals, and he'll find something that they did, and he just says, I got to fix this. The restorers didn't do this right, but it's been well maintained.
And I would imagine with the number of Mustangs that are still flying today, that the parts are not as much of an issue as they are with some of the more rare Warbirds. I mean, I certainly understand that you can't just go to Walmart and pick P-51 parts off the shelf, but they're still out there.
They are. It's just a matter of price, and it's becoming, that and insurance are becoming our biggest Achilles heel. The price of insurance and the price of parts. We have some very, very dedicated people in the industry that want to keep these airplanes flying, but they have costs, just to fabricate a part, just from a blueprint anymore. And the good thing is they're getting into this 3D printing to print parts, and that's going to be a lifesaver for a lot of parts, honestly. But yeah, it's the stuff is available. It's just a matter of paying for it.
Yeah, which brings us to some of the questions that folks have submitted prior to our show tonight about how much does it cost to fly the airplane for an hour, fuel and oil and whatever associated costs.
If and the way I always answer this is that we have a lot of guys that volunteer a lot of labor, including myself. I obviously, when Jerry's doing a full 100-hour an annual inspection, I force him to take money. I said, I'm not going to let you do this for nothing. But honestly, if you were paying for it out of your pocket, I would assume today it would be $2,500 an hour, easy. I figure our costs are right at $2,000 an hour. But that's pretty expensive, and that's about where it's at.
And with that, about what do you calculate for fuel burn for an hour? Like air show. Let's put air show flying on one side, and then living history flights on the other.
Let's put it in the third realm. Cruising cross country, we cruise at about 250 knots, and we burn about 68 gallons an hour. Okay, if we go do a ride, we figure a ride in flight is about a standard ride is about 20 minutes in flight. If we average 20 minutes, we're going to burn about 25 gallons, probably somewhere in the neighborhood. Now, if the tower delays it, sends you around, holds you, now there goes your cost, right straight up through the roof, fuel. But that's the average, and we work that pretty close. If you're doing an air show, you're going all out but you're going for a short amount of time. You're only going for about 10, 15 minutes, but you'll burn about 30 gallons sometimes, depending on how much you mess around and get held, Now, if you're flying for Ralph and his son, you may burn a lot of gas, but thank goodness the air show's buying the gas.
And we're talking about Russell and Ralph Royce, two of the longtime CAF air bosses, and they're well known on the air show circuit.
My favorite, quite frankly.
There you go. As we're talking and kind of segued into the ride flights, that the living history experience, that's been a way to keep these, not only the Mustang, but a lot of the other aircraft in the air being able to generate their own income aside from air shows, because air show income isn't always there, depending on the size of the show. What modifications were made to the airplane to allow someone to sit in the back seat? And we're looking at the picture we're looking at right here is you can see there's obviously an air show shot, so we've got you up front flying, and then in the back you can see there's a space for someone to sit. So what came out?
If you look at that picture and you look at the aft part of the canopy, you'll see a red dot. That used to be and that's just a fuel cap that's just there. That used to go into a fuselage tank that was right back there, and right above that was a huge rack of old vacuum tube radios, and a lot of them heavy. So that occupied all of that space back there. And it was an 85-gallon tank and all the radios. So they pull all that out. We've got modern day solid state radios that's up front, and they put in a jump seat, and our particular seat, I think, is a modified T6 seat that's bolted to the airframe, and of course got the hooker harness seat belts in it, and communication set up for the back.
And even though, I mean, we're looking at a shot, there's someone in the back seat. It's really not that roomy back there.
Well, it looks that way, but honestly, we get some pretty big people in there, and they say, I can't believe how big it is, because you sit down further into the airplane back
Okay.
there than you think you do. The trick is getting a big man in there and out. But seriously, if they're agile, it's really not a big deal. It's not a big deal. We have, I can remember Reg saying that they put such a big man in there. He was a big supporter of the airplane, donor to the airplane. They took the canopy off so he could get in and out real easy. And which is not a big deal. It's a real quick disconnect and snap it back into the rollers. But a bigger guy can get in there than it looks.
Okay. Then there's hope for me yet.
Yeah, oh yeah, you fit no problem.
Well, as you're doing flights around the country, just give us a little briefing on how you prepare someone for a Mustang experience, especially someone who's maybe not been in a high performance aircraft before. How do you prepare them for what they're going to experience?
Well, as you can imagine, with all the rides we give, we've seen just about everything. And the one person that is the most challenging is the person that is so excited that you tell them something and they say, yeah, and they haven't heard a word you said. And when I ask them, I say, what did I just say? You know, you have to figure that out, because they've got to know this data to get out of the airplane if we have an emergency. And they'll start saying, well, you just, I said, no, that's not what I said. And then you have the other guys just starts telling me what you're going to do. I says, have you flown a Mustang before? I just, I make light of it, but I said, have you flown a Mustang before? But that is the biggest challenge. And then you got to tell them, hey, watch out for other airplanes. This is the way we're going to bail out of this airplane if we have a problem. And the two emergencies we will have is either an engine failure. We've got one engine. If it fails, we got to deal with it. Or if we have a flight control failure or a fire I can't put out, we got to come out. And this is the way we come out. So we have to brief that every passenger. So, but I try my best to put them at ease. And if you do it lightly and jokingly, you can usually get them to come around and start listening, And then there's guys you can tell, and man, they've got it down pat. It's just, you've got to adjust to the person.
And when you do bring up a very good point. I mean, this is an old airplane, and things can happen on a new or an old airplane, and really the safety briefing is paramount. But there's also the thrill of flying that in that Mustang and hearing that hearing that engine spool up for the very first time and roll down the runway. I can only imagine. Do you have a rear view mirror in the cockpit so you can see the? Okay.
Yes.
So I suppose on takeoff for most riders, all you see is teeth back there and the big smile.
Yeah, most of the time. And there are people that are nervous, that they're just sitting there kind of checking stuff out. Like I say, you get the whole gambit. And I will never forget this one lady I took for a ride down in Kansas City. This was back when we could still do acrobatics on 6802 rides. And she was so excited. And from the minute I put the throttle up, she was screaming and hollering and yeah. And I could hear that lady hollering, hooping and hollering when we did a loop over the sound of that engine. She is excited, man. So, I mean, stuff like that, you just can't describe how much fun it is to share with somebody, and that, after all the work of doing this, that is the payoff for all the work, is how much people appreciate and enjoy the ride and the experience. It means a lot to most people. I mean, you're always going to have some that dad bought the ride and it doesn't mean that much, but for the most part, they're spending their hard-earned money to go fly in this piece of history, and it's fun.
It certainly is. And now it probably doesn't happen as often as it did maybe 10 years ago, but obviously have had some World War II veterans fly with you as well.
I have. I don't know how many, but several. And one of my favorite guys was Steve Anion down in New Orleans. Little bitty short guy. And he was 91. And I've had 60-year-old guys have a lot more trouble than him. He popped up on that wing and into there he went. And he was ready to go. He listened to the brief like he should and everything. And as soon as we got airborne, I says, "Hey, Steve, you want to try a roll?" He goes, "Yes, sir." So we did one to the left. I says, "How about another?" "Yes, sir." He loved it. Couldn't bother him at all. So it's really fun to do that kind of thing. And I had another guy up in Oshkosh. His name was Jesse Bell. I'll never forget his name, Jesse Bell. He was an infantryman for in the Battle of the Bulge. And someone, I think it was the late Cowden Ward that was offering these guys rides, and he didn't have time to give him a ride. And I heard about it, and I says, "Come on, let's go." So I took him for a ride, and he loved it, and his family was really appreciative of it as well. So, but it's quite the experience.
And we see a shot here of you. Is that you, or is that Jeff?
That's Jeff.
That's Jeff. Tell us a little bit about a couple of. I mean, you've flown the airplane, solo or solo operator, I guess, for a number of years. But you've kind of brought a couple of young folks in to help you out.
Yes, Jeff came on with me 2 years after I took control of the airplane in '09, and he's been along ever since. Good bud, good friend, good compadre, a good pilot, and we don't let each other get by with too much. We see the others doing something, we're on each other like stink, but and that's what we need from each other. We're kind of like brothers. And the next guy after Jeff, we brought two guys actually in the same year. Rifle Joe Shetterly is the next guy in line. He's currently an A-10 pilot in the Missouri Reserves and flies for Delta as well. And Pete Scholl, who is an ex-Air Force pilot, F-16 guy. He's the captain for Southwest down in Phoenix. So, and the newest addition that I'm going to announce tonight, that a lot of people won't know, is Jordan Brown, our new chief of staff. He's going to start flying the airplane next year. So I'm trying to get it all set up so I can walk away and say, "You boys be careful, but have a great time."
It's interesting you mentioned Jeff, you and Jeff and your relationship. That is something that pilots need, and that is someone else looking after you and you looking after them. I know in the air show, in the aerobatic world, there are a lot of the top performers who help mentor younger performers, but they also peer to peer keep an eye on each other, like I'm sure you and Jeff do. And when you see something that's not quite right or something you're not sure about, you not necessarily calling them out in a bad way, but you bring it up just to make sure everybody remains on the safe side.
Absolutely, and we have that agreement. Hey, I'm not going to take offense if you say something that I did something wrong. I mean, I'm going to thank you for it, and we have that agreement. And in fact, that's the agreement with our whole crew. We have that agreement, and you're gonna take it with a good attitude, or you won't be part of the team. That's simple as that. And that's the only way we can operate. And there's none of us that don't make mistakes. None of us. And if it's a mistake, it's a mistake. If it's something intentional, we want to talk about it. You know what I mean? And if it's an attitude issue or something like that. So.
Very important point. I know that you do go to air shows quite a bit, but most of the touring that Gunfighter does is with the Air Power History Tour, and that, of course, features Fifi, the B-29, and the B-24 Diamond Lil.
Mm-hmm. That's correct. This was a great shot here that Phil McKenna did down in Midland, Texas, several years ago, and it was a difficult shot to get because you're talking about two majorly different airframes, but with him flying off of me was especially a challenge for him because I can move my speed a lot easier than he can. But it was a great photo mission, and we are very fortunate that we're part of the Air Power Tour because it really helps us fund the airplane and keep it in tip-top shape. It's a lot of work. I'm not going to deny that. We worked harder this last year than we've worked any year. We did, I think it was 221 rides in the Mustang, and but all four of us pulled our loads. I mean, because I was the retired guy, I pulled a little bit more than I wanted to, but we're going to scale back a little this year and try to not to make it quite so crazy.
So how did you get involved with the tour itself?
Man, I'll have to think about that. I'm pretty sure, as I think back, Jonathan Oliver at the time was running the tour, and he approached us about being part of the tour, you know, and just doing when we could be there, come, and you know, no strings attached. If you can make this stop, great. We just coordinate which ones we could, and it really works for them and for us because when we come along, we attract people that will also take a Fifi ride or a Lil ride. And when they come, they bring us people that, hey, I want to go for a ride in the Mustang since it's here, you know. So we really complement each other in that regard.
It's almost back to the old barnstorming days, and
Exactly.
the impetus of the tour itself was to try to bring more than just one airplane to a tour stop. I think Jonathan said, you know, the more props we have, the better the attendance is. And through the years has kind of evolved, and you have everything from some of the smaller trainers, which are more affordable aircraft to fly in if you'd like that living history experience, all the way up to the Mustang, Fifi, or Diamond Lil, or sometimes even the B-17s go out with them. And it really has taken on a life of its own and has been able to spread the CAF and World War II message to more people than would have necessarily seen him at an air show.
I agree. We've had great exposure to the public through this program and very, very much success on everybody's behalf.
So where are some of the spots that you're going to stop at this year? Get your pen and paper ready, everybody.
Get my cheat list out here. Our first stop is in Huntsville, Alabama, and it's going to be the last weekend of April. And we're going to go from there to Columbus, Georgia. The next weekend in Daytona Beach, Florida. The next weekend after that, Savannah, Georgia. And then Augusta, Georgia. And then we're going to come back home, do some maintenance, make sure everything's good, and go back out with them in June 15th, begin Dayton, Ohio. And then Cincinnati, and then Fort Wayne, Terre Haute, and South Chicago, Lewis University, and then come back, do a little bit more maintenance, go to Dubuque, do the formation clinic, go to Oshkosh from there, do a couple of days of rides in Appleton and spend the whole week at Oshkosh, come back, and then rejoin the tour in August, going to Alpena, Saginaw, Toledo, Mansfield, Ohio, I think, and then Niagara. And that's as far as we've planned. We're working on other stops, but that's about all we've got planned so far. We've got a bid out for an air show at Altus Air Force Base the first weekend of October. That's what we have so far. Of course, we'll be at Wings Over Dallas way late in the year this year, and right. like the 11th or November or something like that, I think.
Yeah, it's the 11th, 12th, and 13th. It's right at Veterans Day. Yeah, because of the way the air show schedules for some of the other CAF shows have fallen this year, it's one of those years where everything shifts by a week.
Gotcha.
So the Wings Over Dallas show was going to conflict with I believe the Fort Worth air show.
Gotcha.
So Wings Over Dallas is appropriately on Veterans Day, because that's the big focus of that show is World War II and saluting our veterans.
Gotcha. Okay.
And if people want to kind of keep up with where you are, the Air Power History Tour, they have all the complete dates of where you're going, right?
Yes, they do, and that's not solidified yet. As I said, we keep it up on our website as well. I kind of put that burden on Jeff on www.p51gunfighter.com. But those both are interchangeable. I mean, you can get from one website to the other and see the schedules. And we update it as changes come along as well.
You mentioned a maintenance, and in that with that airplane, you've got a 100-hour inspection that you need to do every 100 hours. How many hours did you put on the airplane last year?
We put on 100 and almost 30 hours. So we had to do 100 hour this year. We haven't had to do that every year, but twice now we've had to do 100 hour. And that's a good and a bad thing, you know. You got to stop and say, hey guys, we're out till we get this inspection done. So, but you know, that's part of the deal.
Well, and it's also good to catch any minor sort of things that are going on with the airplane before they become major problems.
Absolutely, it's doing what it's designed to do.
That's right.
Catch the things that we don't know is going on.
Now, just briefly, you are also, aside from flying Gunfighter and being very involved with the Commemorative Air Force, you're also the president of NATA, which is the North American Trainer Association. Tell us a little bit about that.
We are we're actually the largest signatory of FAST, Formation and Safety Training, which is nothing but the liaison between the FAA and the formation community. Back in the 90s, the FAA just let everybody know, hey guys, you're going to have to start policing yourself a little better, or we're going to do it and you're not going to like it. So the guys got together, I'm thinking it was like 93 at NWAC, and started working on this, the FAST signatory and the operation. And the CAF was part of the first signatory, the Trayron, and NATA was part of the original group. And they got together and they set up standards and ways of doing things. So once you got a certification using those procedures, you were issued a credential, which is nothing but a formation card that is good for 1 year. And that's what you had to have to fly in waivered airspace. You don't need a card to go out and fly formation with your buds on Saturday. That's not required. But you must have a formation card credential to fly in airspace, or waivered airspace. So
just to clarify that, for those who aren't quite familiar with it, when you see a large formation or even a small formation of aircraft, maybe 2 fighters or a flight of 4, or even more than that, each one of those pilots has to be qualified and have what's called a formation card, so that they can safely fly in an airshow airspace.
That is correct. It's just like an extension of your pilot's license to do those maneuvers at the show.
And NATA covers a number of different aircraft, not just North American P-51s and T-6s, correct?
T-6s, P-51s, and the bombers, the B-25, which, you know, let's face it, to get a bunch of bombers together is very expensive, but there are guys in the industry that fly formation very good and do fly the B-25s in beautiful formations. And also in the Mustangs, they're very expensive to get together. And that's why we take advantage when we have a chance to get together at these major air shows, especially Oshkosh. You never get that many Mustangs or fighters together. where you can fly, that much formation, and get really proficient. And you get the differential aircraft, and dissimilar is the way they use the term. And it's different, but once you've done it a lot, it's just a gas. I mean, there's not much more fun than flying acrobatics and or flying formation, in airplanes. It's a real hard challenge to learn it, but once you do it, it is a gas.
Well, let's take a look in the few minutes we have remaining here of some of the questions that have come in. I've tried to interject them into the presentation as we've been going along, but didn't get to all of them. What's your favorite movie featuring a Mustang and why?
I can't. That's a hard question.
I can. You think about it. I'll jump in on this one because this is the movie that gave me my love and passion for the Mustang, and that is a movie called Battle Hymn, which was about the Korean conflict. Yeah. And I went to Catholic grade school, and I forget the lead character's name, but he was a P-51 or an F-51 pilot in Korea at that time, and ended up inadvertently bombing near, I think, an orphanage, and there were a lot of civilians that were injured and killed. And the moral of the story was he had taken that experience and become a missionary. Unfortunately, I took that experience as in that airplane is really cool, and I want to know more about it. So that one is the one for me, and that was really my start in a Warbird airplane. So that gave you time to think about it, Larry. Did you come up with anything?
I honestly do not have a particular movie that, I mean, let's face it, in Saving Private Ryan, when the Mustangs come in and start strafing right there at, when they're at the bridge, that was pretty darn cool. I don't care what anybody says, but I don't have a particular movie, and frankly, that I think, is one over the other. Every time I see that airplane in anything, it does it for me. So, and then that's the honest truth.
There we go. You've met a lot of pilots in your day. Any of them that stick out as ones that you particularly admire?
Yes. Who cannot admire Bob Hoover? I mean, the consummate gentleman, the ultimate pilot. Gosh, he could fly an airplane like no one. I mean, he's the apex, in my opinion, Bob Hoover. And to have personally met him and sit and visit with him was a privilege and an honor. And he actually flew Gunfighter. Yeah, I got a picture of him taxiing in Gunfighter. And so that's kind of special too. There's a lot of guys that, Reggie flew the hell out of the airplane. Believe me, he could fly it very well, and flew it for so many years. Unfortunately, the late Dale Snodgrass, crazy man. I mean, I say that respectfully because, God, he was a hell of a stick. And I watched him fly the Mustang, and he was a pretty hot pilot. Let's face it. That's probably the two people I would say that I would really respect what they've done in the airplane. And I mean, there's a lot of people that fly, and look what Steve Hinton does, for Christ's sake. He flies everything, and flies it superb, and so does his son. Right. And just wonderful people, down to earth, that you can talk to, and I respect them all.
Let's see, how many hours do you have in the Mustang?
Somewhere around 1,550 hours, I think it is.
Do you have any idea how that compares to other P-51 pilots?
I honestly do not. I honestly do not. I know Lee Lauterbach's well in excess of 10,000 hours, and you know, that's someone else that flies the airplane, so well. I went and trained with Lee. He's Mr. Mustang. Let's face it.
And Lee Lauterbach has the two-seat Mustang, which is actually the TF-51 trainer down in Kissimmee, Florida, correct?
Correct.
And that airplane was specifically built as a two-seat trainer?
Yes. Okay. Yes. Now the one I think was a converted one, but they're completely converted exactly like the Timco built them. And Timco didn't build too many of them. That's down in Dallas, but that was right at the end of the war, I think, when they built those.
Yeah, for the most part, those who checked out in the P-51, like you, got wrung out in the T-6 first before they even sat in the cockpit of the P-51, and then pretty much your first flight was your introduction to the transition.
Yeah, I was fortunate that I got to fly in a two-seater, or at least two controls. It was one of those that had a mod in it that had the throttle, the stick, and the pedals in the back. And a gentleman named Harry Barr in Lincoln, Nebraska, put me in the front seat and said, let's go fly. I said, well, Harry, I haven't even read the book. He said, don't matter. He said, you've been flying a T6. This thing's going to be a lot easier than a T6. And he's right. Once you got almost 200 hours in a T6, you're ready to fly a Mustang. You just need to know the systems and the gotchas, and you're ready to go.
There you go. Finally, what's the best advice someone has ever given you?
I would say, and it's my advice to pass on, is whatever you do in life and in flying is always keep your attitude in check. Because if you get so full of yourself, you can and very easily kill yourself and someone else along with you. I've been fortunate in my 28,000 plus hours. I've had some incidents, but I haven't been hurt, and I try to accept the fact that things can happen to me, and I know they can, and I have to fly like that with that attitude, and I have to treat other people like I want to be treated, and respect them the way I want to be respected.
That sounds good. We appreciate your time tonight, and thank you to everyone for joining us. Again, don't forget to click the like, subscribe, or follow button so we can let you know about any future shows. And if you have any ideas of folks like Larry you'd like to hear from, or aircraft you'd like us to profile, just drop Leah Block a note at media@cafhq.org. Thanks again to our guest, Larry Lumpkin. Larry, enjoy the warmth down in Florida, and we'll see you out on the airshow circuit this year.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
All right. Until next time, for the Commemorative Air Force, I'm Steve Buss. Have a good night.
Thanks for watching this special Best Of episode of CAF Warbird Tube. Be sure to catch Warbird Tube Wednesday evenings. You can also watch any of our past episodes anytime you'd like just by going to our YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/CAF Media TV. I'm Steve Buss. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you here next time on Warbird Tube.